Hello, English learners. Welcome back to the A to Z English podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Sarah. We're so happy to have you with us today. In our last episode, we took a deep dive into the world of English idioms and expressions. We discussed how idioms add richness and depth to the language, making conversations more colorful and engaging. We also looked at some common idioms like kick the bucket and let the cat out of the bag. We hope you found that episode as exciting as we did.
Absolutely, Sarah. Idioms are such a fascinating aspect of the English language. They're like little windows into the culture and history behind the language. Understanding and using idioms can really elevate your English skills, making you sound more natural and fluent. In today's episode, we're going to continue our exploration of idioms by introducing you to even more interesting and useful ones that you can start incorporating into your daily conversations.
That's right, John. In this episode, we'll discuss a variety of new idioms, breaking down their meanings, origins, and how to use them effectively in different contexts. By the end of this episode, you'll have a whole new set of expressions to enrich your English language toolkit.
Before we dive into today's idioms, let's quickly recap what an idiom is for any new listeners. An idiom is a phrase or expression whose meaning is not immediately obvious from the individual words. For example, when we say spill the beans, we don't mean literally spilling beans, but rather revealing a secret. Idioms are all about figurative language, and they often have deep cultural or historical roots.
Exactly, John. And that's what makes idioms so unique and interesting. They're not just about the words themselves, but about the meaning that's been carried forward through years of use and cultural evolution. With that in mind, let's jump into today's idioms and see what new expressions we can add to your vocabulary. 1. Common English idioms, new idioms for the 19th episode. Let's start with the idiom, burn the midnight oil. This phrase has been around for centuries and originally referred to working by the light of an oil lamp late into the night. Nowadays, it means staying up late to work on something, especially when you're working hard to meet a deadline. For instance, he burned the midnight oil to finish the report before the deadline. It's a great way to describe those late-night study sessions or work projects.
That's a classic idiom, Sarah. Another one we hear often is under the gun. This idiom comes from a situation where someone is literally under threat or pressure. In modern usage, it means being under a lot of pressure to complete something, usually because of a tight deadline or urgent situation. For example, she was really under the gun to submit her assignment before the professor's deadline. It's a perfect way to describe those moments when you're feeling the heat to get something done quickly.
Another idiom that's commonly used is a blessing in disguise. This idiom refers to something that seems bad or unfortunate at first, but turns out to be beneficial in the long run. The idea is that what initially appears to be a problem or setback can actually lead to something positive. For instance, losing that job was a blessing in disguise because it led her to find a career she truly enjoys. It's a comforting thought that sometimes life's challenges can lead to unexpected opportunities.
That's a great one, Sarah. How about the best of both worlds? This idiom is used to describe a situation where you can enjoy the advantages of two different things. It's often used when you're in a situation where you don't have to compromise. For example, living in the city but working from home gives me the best of both worlds. This idiom is perfect for describing situations where you're able to combine the benefits of two different scenarios.
Another classic idiom is beat around the bush. This phrase has its origins in hunting, where hunters would literally beat the bushes to drive out the game. In everyday language, it means to avoid getting to the point or to avoid saying something directly. For example, stop beating around the bush and tell me what really happened. It's often used when someone is hesitant to address an issue directly or is being evasive.
Let's not forget the idiom, hit the ground running. This means to start something and do it successfully from the very beginning. It's often used in the context of starting a new job or project. For instance, she hit the ground running when she started her new job and quickly became a valuable team member. It's a great way to describe someone who starts something with energy and enthusiasm and immediately begins making progress.
Another idiom we hear quite frequently is jump on the bandwagon. This phrase originally referred to joining a parade by hopping onto a bandwagon, but in modern usage, it means to join a popular trend or activity. For example, everyone seems to be jumping on the bandwagon and starting their own podcast these days. It's often used to describe situations where people start doing something just because it's popular.
Finally, let's discuss the idiom, "the ball is in your court," which we touched on in our previous episode. This idiom comes from sports, particularly tennis, where the ball is literally in the other player's court, meaning it's their turn to act. In everyday language, it means that it's someone's turn to take action or make a decision. For example, "I've done all I can on this project, so now the ball is in your court." It's a way of saying that the next step is up to someone else.
2. Origins and cultural insights. Now that we've gone over some new idioms, let's take a moment to explore the origins of a few of these expressions. Understanding where these idioms come from can give us deeper insight into their meanings and help us remember them more easily.
That's a great idea, Sarah. Let's start with burn the midnight oil. This idiom has its roots in the pre-electricity era when people would use oil lamps to light their homes. Back then, staying up late to work or study meant literally burning oil in your lamp, hence the phrase. It's interesting to see how this historical context has carried forward into modern language, even though we no longer use oil lamps.
Another idiom with an interesting origin is under the gun. This phrase likely comes from military or law enforcement contexts, where being under the gun could mean being under direct threat. Over time, it evolved to describe any situation where someone is under intense pressure. It's a reminder of how language can evolve from very literal meanings to more figurative ones.
The idiom, "a blessing in disguise," also has a rich history. The idea of a blessing that doesn't look like a blessing at first has been around for centuries. It's a concept that appears in many cultures and religions, often related to the idea that things happen for a reason, even if we don't understand it right away.
Understanding these origins not only makes idioms more memorable, but also gives us a glimpse into the cultural and historical contexts that shape the English language. It's fascinating how these expressions have stood the test of time and continue to be used in everyday conversations.
Absolutely, Sarah. And that's why learning idioms is not just about memorizing phrases. It's about connecting with the culture and history behind the language. The more you understand these connections, the more natural your use of idioms will become.
3. Incorporating idioms into conversation. Now that we've covered the meanings and origins of these idioms, let's talk about how you can start incorporating them into your everyday conversations. The key to using idioms effectively is to make sure they fit naturally within the context of your speech.
Exactly, Sarah. One of the best ways to practice is by gradually introducing 1 or 2 new idioms into your daily conversations. Start with phrases that are easy to remember and relevant to your everyday life. For example, if you're working late, you might say, "I'm burning the midnight oil tonight."
Another effective strategy is to write down sentences using new idioms. This helps reinforce the meaning and context of the idiom, making it easier to recall when you need it. For instance, if you're under pressure to finish a project, you might write, "I'm really under the gun to get this done by Friday."
It's also important to pay attention to how native speakers use idioms in real-life situations. Listen to conversations, watch movies, or tune into podcasts where idioms are used. This will help you understand the nuances of when and how to use them.
And don't be afraid to ask for feedback. If you're practicing with a language partner or friend, ask them to let you know if your use of idioms sounds natural. Over time, with practice, you'll become more comfortable and confident in using idiomatic expressions.
Another great exercise is to try and use idioms in creative writing. Create short stories or dialogues where you incorporate the idioms you've learned. This will help you practice using them in varied contexts and make them a more natural part of your vocabulary.
And remember, idioms are a fantastic way to enrich your language and connect more deeply with English speakers. The more you practice, the more seamlessly these expressions will fit into your conversations.
That concludes our exploration of new English idioms for today. We hope you enjoyed learning about these expressions and that you're excited to use them in your daily conversations.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through the world of idioms. Keep practicing and exploring new idiomatic expressions, and stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll continue to enhance your English skills.
Thanks again for listening. We look forward to bringing you more valuable language tips in our upcoming episodes. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye, everyone. Keep up the great work and see you next time.